Hello, and welcome back to the Awakening Philosophy podcast. My name is Jed. Good to see you here. And we are reading Philosophical Midwifery today. Hooray! So, thank you for joining us in Twitch and YouTube chat, those of you who are here. So let's jump straight in. We are all familiar enough with what midwifery is about by now. Mastering the logos and the dialectic and applying it specifically to freeing us from our problems. Last time, we talked about, we had some real world examples from our friends in Twitch, talking about becoming more free from the psychic parasites of our problems that demonstrate in a certain state of mind and divide out into other areas of their life and conclude in certain kinds of failures that repeat throughout their lives. Those being three of the four categories of the dialectic: demonstration, division, and conclusion. So, after just as newbies, being able to reflect on the state of mind, on how it divides up, on how it concludes in their life, that afforded them, even that simple level of self-reflection, afforded them a freedom from that fate, that inevitable fate, and a freedom from that psychic parasite, freed up some time, energy, awareness. And it also freed them up to participate greater in reason. They were able to reflect with reason upon the arguments themselves. Now, that's fascinating for us, because we want to participate in reason itself. Reason itself. Because reason itself is something called the logos. The reasonableness, or the understandability of reality, of ourselves, of all of it. Now, we use the word intelligibility because reason itself, for it to be a principle of reality, has to exist eternally. It can't just be in a physical thing, because then there'll be another physical planet that would be unable to be understood or irrational. So this is metaphysics, going from the physical world to what's meta, or before physics, the realm of being, that which is eternal. So if reason is itself a principle, the paradigm of all principles, we could say, then it also should be in being, which means it's knowable, the object of knowledge, that which we can apprehend directly with the eye of the soul. Now, the process of jumping into that experience, that's the art of the logos or dialectic applied to being. That's Platonic philosophy. In the book, Pierre was saying we need to return to a revitalized understanding of Platonic philosophy that not just includes Plato, but those who studied his work after him, Plotinus and Proclus, but returning to our understanding roots, our logos roots. He also said, by the way, when we do return to this system that will rival any other spiritual tradition we see around us, for good reason, then we can also bring in philosophical midwifery to it. So it's not exactly the same. We're not just going back to Plato, we're going back, but we have leveled up. This return back to the beginning, having leveled up with new understanding and new ability, why, that's the exact same process we go through in the dialectic. We go for a definition. How does it demonstrate? How does it divide up? From those divisions, can you synthesize it together? The first part of conclusion. and then analysis. Can you refer it back to the start and see the beginning in a new way? Now, if our whole lives are a dialectic, if we are walking dialectics, playing out the implications, the demonstrations, the divisions, the conclusions of what follows based on our idea of ourselves, I point to our head, but it's not in our head, it's the mind, then we can also gain an insight about why we're here. This is the use of analogy. What we gain on the lesser, can we apply it to the greater? What we understand about returning to the Platonic tradition with a new understanding of midwifery, we can apply it to our souls. Living a kind of life, playing out a dialectic, and if we play the game, if we pick up the art, if we learn the dialectic, then we can return back to wherever we came from before we were reincarnated with a deeper understanding and ability to function, and freedom from any psychic parasites, and ability to participate in logos to a greater degree. All of the conclusions we saw in real time in an example of a problem that was shared last time. Returning to where we left off to be able to function better, function with more freedom, with more power and energy, but also, above all of those, what do you get if you have freedom from problems? What do you get if you have more energy? What do you get when you're freed from the fate of those failures and those negative states of mind? In other words, what's the ruling term? What's the thing that all of those allow you to do as a whole? What's the synthesis? Sharing in the logos. All of those things can be used to share in the logos. And if that's what we are learning to do in our reading of the Meno and other Platonic texts, and we can see that midwifery is essential for our ability to participate in the Meno with excellence. We're not doing a cursory reading. We're not doing it so we can tell our friends we've read the book or to sound smart.
Have you read Brad?
He didn't know what solipsism was. He didn't know what deontological moral philosophy was.
We're not doing it to do that kind of thing. We're doing it to afford us the freedom and the ability to participate more in the Logos itself. Now, understanding why that's so important and how that relates to our destiny, that's our reading of the Platonic texts. That's what we were discovering in the Phaedo. And this ability to do it with excellence, that's what we're exploring in the Meno. So I hope you're enjoying those series as well. So with all of that in mind, let's jump into where we left off in the text and continue reading with that guiding light motivating us. Wow, the more we do this, the more free we are, free from our chains of fate and free to participate or share in the Logos itself. Wow.
Wow.
So let's take that with us into our reading. Let's jump in. Here we are, checking in with the chat. Right, wish to rival the works of Homer and Plato and the Bible. All right, so that's an expression that Socrates uses. If we're able to do this, we will create something that will rival the works of Homer and Hesiod for his time, but for us, the religiously inspired texts that influence people today, the Bible, the Quran maybe. So, where do we leave off? Okay, our conclusions are... Okay, so these are all the things that are challenged by this new way of thinking. That man is not responsible for his own plight. We have no free will. We have no ability to do things. It's just our chemistry. It's just our genes. Or it's just our historical circumstances. We have no power and will and ability to respond or responsibility. And also the prejudice of others. Okay? But our conclusion from midwifery is that man could be responsible for his own state of mind. And this irrationality lack of sharing in the Logos is learned. Our problems can be traced to conclusions that we ourselves drew. Yes, we had the circumstances of our family, their lineage, the area and time of our birth, the planet of our birth. But different people under the same circumstances may have drawn different conclusions about themselves. So we drew the conclusion from these interactions with family, authorities, social institutions, and traditional teachings. Here I am. Where are we? We are here. It was clear that these conclusions would seriously question the long-established academic distinctions that separate the professions and disciplines, which, since they themselves are products of and based upon philosophical distinctions that can themselves be critically reviewed in light of our study. So, just as in within us, so too within society and the way it functions to establish certain traditions, including academic and social institutions, we could examine the premises and the way of thinking that they have with philosophical midwifery and say, hey, what are the illusions or the ignorances or the damaging false beliefs they inherited, our society inherited? And we've seen a lot. We cannot change our mind, or we have no free will, or treat humans as machines, just with behaviorism and psychology, or affect their biochemistry with drugs. That's all we can do. We have no higher purpose that we should be arranging our society towards. Just let the worst nature of people play out. That's what it means to be free. Let oppression and tyranny and capitalism and all that play out. That's just as good as anything else. That's a certain false belief, isn't it? That people are made better through punishment, which really just functions to keep people enslaved, because people are made better by sharing in the Logos. Isn't that interesting? All the other prejudices, if we don't threaten people with starvation, they won't work hard. That's why we need to keep our population afraid of starvation and homelessness with this disgusting capitalist system. Otherwise, hey, everyone will be lazy. Well, that's not true either. We all seek truth. We all seek to understand and free ourselves from our problems. And if we have a society geared towards facilitating that, why, we might be able to actually seek excellence and develop a higher kind of society with much greater happiness, much less suffering, because we're actually doing what we're here to do. Of course, a prejudice is there is no reason, there is no Logos, there is no purpose, there is no telos or goal at the end of the path of reason. So therefore, just let tyranny play out. Why not? Again, challenged by recognizing that we can understand and solve problems. Lots of things being challenged by a new paradigm of thinking. But when you speak all of those challenges out loud, it's kind of obvious. Like, of course there'd be a reason for us to be here. Of course, just letting people play out their psychopathy, play out their ignorance, play out their pathologos. Of course that's not good. Of course that's going to lead to mass suffering and the destruction of planet and our species. Saying it out loud, it's obvious. That's kind of what we're doing, right? Making the obvious, bringing the obvious to light. However, we did recognize earlier that one of the problems Pierre recognized in himself was that what was normal and obvious to him, the natural functioning as a philosophical midwife to help to talk to people about their blocks and problems, that ended up freeing them from those blocks, enabling them to reach their higher goals, especially their higher spiritual goals in meditation. That was normal for him. It surprised him that it seemed extraordinary to others. So the more that we are in this game, the more obvious and clear it sounds. Of course it does, because that's a hallmark of truth. Once you see truth, it has to be obvious. But those of you in the channel, in the community, might have to be reminded that what seems obvious to you, it took effort. It took, not effort maybe, but curiosity, wonder, focus. It took courage. It took you sharing in this podcast series for you to see it obviously. And that might be exceptional to those who have never been introduced to the logos before. So keep that in mind so we don't fall into that mistake by devaluing our own seeing just because it's clear to us. Right, in the chat, living dialectically in the right way would be right. Because if we're not doing it consciously because we don't think we're responsible, we're just at the whims of the powerful elites, or at the whims of prejudices, or at the whims of our biochemistry, then we will be still in a dialectic. You're still in the game. You're still in the game. You'll just be inside B. What follows if you don't have the logos? Well, you have to be holding on to some idea about self and reality. And telos, the goal, that's the pathologos. You are playing out the dialectic of your pathologos until you wake up and realize, oh, I'm in this dialectic. Let's jump to side A. What happens if the logos does exist? Because the dialectic has 4 categories, but 2 sides. And here it is. Side A, if X is, that's side A. And if X is not. If, now we could say, well, if X is not, this is not non-being. It doesn't mean doesn't exist. It means doesn't exist in eternity, in being. So what's an idea of self or logos that isn't real in being? The pathologos. So that's our life here. Now, fortunately, we have the ability to wake up to this pattern that we're living out. Midwifery helps clear us from this, so we have the freedom to jump into this. What if the logos or the self does exist? That's the game we're in. Isn't it interesting? You can understand all history like this, our lives like this. Spiritual systems, we've already talked about understanding this through. This is why this way of thinking can rival all spiritual systems. Every spiritual system could be in one of these 8 categories. Every system of thinking. Which one? Which one is relativism? Which one is nihilism? Which one is materialism? Which one is Zen? Which one is Taoism? Which one is Hinduism? Which one is Nirvana? Now, the answer to that question, those questions, that's the Parmenides. That's the series we have on Parmenides, by the way. Isn't it interesting? We can understand all of it with understanding. Now, when you say it, isn't it interesting? You can understand everything with understanding. Well, no doy. Well, of course. What are you talking about? Of course you can understand everything with understanding. So it sounds simple and obvious once we see it, but it will have taken us work to see it, to learn what the dialectic is, to not just define the dialectic, but to demonstrate it, to practice it in our lives. Not just practice it, but practice it in division, in philosophy, in our relationships, in midwifery, in our dreams. You can apply this to all of those things, everything that shares the logos. And then not just having applied it in these different areas, but having reflected on that process and come to a conclusion. What conclusion or synthesis can you derive? What does it mean if your relationships, your life, your understanding of philosophy, your midwifery, your dreams, what if they all can be understood with the same dialectical structure? You need to do that. And then after having done that, the second part of the conclusion, can you relate that conclusion from the divisions back to your definition of the dialectic? Not only does it have this 8-part structure, because these 4 and these 4 if it doesn't happen, but you've got a new conclusion. Somehow it relates to you. So it's obvious when you've done this, but it takes the work. In the chat, I also had the same idea as Pierre, that all we know is what the family teaches, just without pathologos. It was missing. Right. So you might come into this recognizing, yeah, everything that I've learned, I had to have learned it like usually before the age of 6 years of trying to figure out what it means to be alive. And as far as I'm aware, not many 6-year-olds go on a search to find a true guru, which is difficult even for us as adults. How many gurus claim to know the meaning of life but lack the logos, or have only reached a level of logos, level of understanding? Or maybe they've had a vision, but they don't recognize it's the highest vision. It's very difficult even for adults. But imagine you're below the age of 6 years old, and you're stuck with these 2 people, or 1 or 2 people, who like to pretend to know everything. Our soul seeks true knowing, but without the logos, how do we get there? We can pretend, we bullshit our kids, we bullshit everyone. Hey, I pretend I know everything. And my kids are too young to question me, so that's often the only chance we get to pass off our opinions as knowledge. So that's where you learn it from. These people cosplaying, role-playing, playing a role as a knower, who they themselves almost certainly didn't go on that quest to find true understanding, true logos. They're just passing off their prejudice opinions, or really their pathologos. So yeah. So, that's not personal. That's everybody's situation. That's why we have so much conflict. I will fight to the death to justify my particular opinions about God. What are they? They're Muslim ones. Are your parents Muslim? Of course. And then over you standing next to them, what do you say? Well, I will fight till the death to defend my opinions. Are they Christian ones? Of course. Are your parents Christian? Of course. So you two are willing to kill each other and blow up the rest of us in the process to defend your opinions you got from your parents. So you're doing the exact same thing. You've got more in common than you realize. Isn't that interesting? There is more uniting you than divides you. The only thing that's dividing you is the content of your education, your pathologos and prejudices. But what unites you is you are a human being where you necessarily have to get this and have to do the work to learn this. So we have a question, what am I carrying and what am I unconsciously or unknowingly loyal to that's causing my problems? That's this question that we all have. It's not personal, by the way. And this question, what is the truth? If I was free of this false idea about self and reality, what's the truth? This question we tackle over here in reading Socrates. That's the channel. And this question we are doing right now over here in Midwifery. So yay. Isn't that interesting? I think it's interesting. That's why I do this. And the chat, dreams. I had a dream about me before I was born. There might be a reason for the whole thing, right? Is there a reason for even our birth? Right. The same clothes. You You dress the same way as your parents make you dress. You can realize that when you start to grow up. Hang on a second. Maybe when you get to high school and you can start choosing your own outfits. Hang on a second. My mum's dressed me all the time. Only now as like a teenager can I get to choose how I dress. Well, you had to have had clothes on. Someone had to dress you. Now, the difference is, can you go to the next level? The beliefs and way of living that I've had, the beliefs about self that I've had, I must have got from somewhere. Only as a teenager do I realize I'm allowed to question it. Usually when you can get out of the house. That's where we're going. That's what we're in. That's what we're doing now. So good for us. So, our irrationality is learned. We have the ability to change our own state of mind. That's a good thing to know. Our problems can be traced to conclusions we ourselves drew from our interactions with these people, family mainly, and around that authorities and social institutions and the traditions that our family inherited. It was clear that they seriously questioned the long-established academic distinctions that separate the professions, that themselves can be reviewed. Many believe that philosophy could never compete with psychology in the field of psychotherapy, healing problems. Psychology could never become a part of a rational system. There is no rational psychology. We're crazy. People be crazy. Why do people have problems? Because they're mad. No, there is a rationality even behind the apparent irrationality. It could no longer be perceived as being primarily an empirical science. Right? That's what psychology wanted, to be with the big boys like chemistry and physics, to be respected. How do you get respected? It's empirical. What does empirical mean? Physical only. Can be tested. Now you can hang on a second. You can test theories about the mind too. Philosophy is a spiritual tradition. It's about the psyche and what happens and how to separate from your body. So it's not physical. You start physical because you're born in a body. But all of the things that we learn is rational and you can prove. In fact, that's what makes it better than science. You can prove them because you can actually experience the metaphysical dimension. That's what makes it spirituality. So how is that not testable and provable? Oh no, empirical science means ignore anything that isn't physical. Can you put it in a test tube? Then it's good. So what happens if you realize we're not just physical? So you don't treat problems with behaviorism. Give yourself a physical cookie every time you do something good. Give yourself a smack on the nose whenever you do something bad, like a dog, training a dog. Of course, we even know that's a terrible way of training a dog. You don't hit your dog with a newspaper anymore. You understand they have a mind and they're learning. So we wouldn't even treat dogs that way. But psychology wants to be primarily an empirical science. Why? Well, it's a prejudice or a pathologos. From Aristotle. Physical. Aristotle dropped the ball after Plato and wanted to physically categorize everything and didn't realize philosophy was a method for spirituality and his tradition. That's why we have different categories. Physics, chemistry. It can't be unified under one title, logos. That's our academic system. Are you a major in physics? Are you a major in chemistry? Are you a major in marketing? Oh God. Right, different. We're unifying them under one vision. Midwifery, an essential part of the Platonic dialectic. We're learning the dialectic. So it's more than a return to a revitalized study. We're adding to the tradition. Midwifery places the individual search as a primary concern. That's why it's a Platonic vision. You have a goal. You have an individual. Yes, we're all following the same dialectic. Yes, we all have the same destiny and telos, but the way you do it is unique to you. You got a different pathologos than me. You were born into a different family, different period of time, different culture. So let's figure out what you are here to realize. Philosophy can chart its own research, design its study, and nature its uses of the dialectic without adopting the empirical behavioral framework, the old-fashioned, outdated, archaic. Now, this is 30 years, this book was written 30 years before we are studying it now, 35 years, I think. So even in the last 35 years, we know that behaviorism is stupid. We don't hit people with newspapers whenever they make a mistake. You don't give yourself rewards to change your behavior. We recognize we have minds and there are causes to our functioning. So even this book was a little bit ahead of its time, but we're realizing we know this now. That's why you're not allowed to hit children in classrooms. Doesn't do anything except allow abuse to continue and ignorance and bullshit. So, we are also charting a course for philosophy and returning it to an earlier vision of man and the universe. If it's true for you and for the guy next to you and the guy living up the street and the teacher who used to hit his students, then it's true for everyone. The many to the one, for all time. But also it's true of the universe. We are living in a universe that is inherently rational and is following the logos, expressed within a framework that we can recognize as the dialectic, in its unfolding and its return. Isn't that wonderful? Isn't that curious? Isn't that interesting? Wow. So this is where we're up to. Thus, the validation study would have twin goals. Oh, in chat, check with chat. Theory, break kids like horses. Right, so in the chat, break kids like horses. So one of the ways that the pathologos is passed on is, how do I get this kid to give up his participation in the logos, his natural freedom, curiosity, wonder, asking questions? I will break his spirit like I break the spirit of a horse. This is one of the ways it's done. Right. So, obviously disgusting and unnecessary. And what happens if we bring to our attention our parents or authority figures who tried to break our spirit because they thought they were doing something good? Don't you know that if you ask questions, people will hate you? I don't want you to be hated, so I'm going to beat you every time you ask a question. That will teach you the way the world is. Because don't you know that everyone's just as ignorant as me? We project onto others our own false beliefs about ourselves and the universe. So if you're a racist, you'll probably tell you want your kids to learn everyone's racist. That's why it's a false belief. You believe everyone is the reflection of you. So there's a famous saying about right-wingers, who are the ones who are the most conservative or most tied to their pathologos, conserving the old traditions from their past. So one thing that we say about them, what people say about them is, every accusation is a confession. They don't trust progressives because they think they're lying and they're actually selfish and they don't care about other people. They can't imagine people who have empathy for other human beings because they can't. They think they're liars because if they said it, they would be lying. So the right-wingers or the fascists or the conservatives constantly lie, pretend to be for the workers or for unions or for helping people or for, looking after this planet that we live in. But they know that they're lying. Same thing, they pretend to love whatever religion is most popular to get their votes, but they're lying. They know they're lying, and so they expect everyone else to be a grifter too. Oh, those Democrats, they don't actually want to help the environment. They're just lying. It's a conspiracy so they can make money. Because that's what they would be doing and are doing. We project our image of self and reality onto the world. What we're doing in this channel is learning the truth and learning how to purify what's false about what people actually do, including institutions. So it's a fairly curious situation. And if we actually go back to our parents and say, hey, by the way, what you think other people are is not true. I can point to a million examples, but you won't even believe it until you find who you learnt it from. And by the way, you weren't helping me by teaching me a lesson and preparing me for the world. You function in the exact opposite way. It was not excellent or virtuous or just. You made it more difficult for me to be myself in the world. So what you thought you were doing with love was based on a sick and false idea of love. What would happen if we actually were able to put that into words in a way we weren't able to do when we were too young? Let's continue to read and find out. Thus, the validation study would have twin goals. Let's bring up my highlighter. Okay, here we go. Twin goals. Highlighter is up. 1, 2. 1, to demonstrate that philosophical midwifery can function as a mode of psychotherapy. And reach the same emotionalized behavior as reported in psychological literature. Emotionalized behavior, that sounds like the words that they use. So it's behavior, it's behavior that has been, relates our state of mind, what they call emotions. We could just say state of mind, feeling state. Okay, and number 2, to confirm that midwifery can be reconciled with Plato's thought, especially that part identified as rationalism. So, the validation study, does it? Can we demonstrate that it's a mode of psychotherapy that works? And can we also show that it can be reconciled with Plato's thought? In 1986, that's not the right color. In 1986, we completed our study and presented a validation study of the Grimes dialectic as a mode of rational psychotherapy. All right, so we can see where it began. Grimes dialectic. Now we are seeing it as just the part B side of the dialectic. But this might be part of introducing a new idea to the world. That might be too many steps ahead of where they're at. So instead, because the mainstream thinks that philosophy is just opinions. Philodoxia, as Socrates says, that philosophy isn't love of opinions. And same thing with psychotherapy. There are different modes, personal opinions, systems. Some people like to do it this way, some people like to do it that way. So if that's their way of thinking, it might be too much of a jump from where they're familiar to say it's just dialectic. Because they think, oh, isn't there a Hegelian dialectic and a Kantian dialectic and a this dialectic and a that dialectic? Where people take the word and they use it in different ways. Also, mode of rational therapy. Again, one among many. So we would say that's an interesting place where they started in 86. Where we are, we might recognize, well, yeah, it's just the dialectic and it is rational psychotherapy, not a mode of. Just like the title of this book is A New Paradigm, but when we talk about it, we say it's the new paradigm. And one of our questions is, how could that be so? Why is it that we are saying the new paradigm? Okay, they did this before the 94th Annual Convention of the American Psychological Association in Washington, D.C. That sounds like it's very important because there are so many words in its name, and it also has some numbers, which is also why you know it's so important. So good for them. The study concluded with the statement: results of the analysis showed that significant developments of DRP, dialectical rational psychotherapy, theory are testable, and following its prescribed cognitive method uncovers the pathologos and surfaces emotionalized behavior associated with one's fundamental beliefs. That the DRP is prescriptive and has the capacity for prescriptive, for verification. Now, what does prescriptive mean? For a system to be legitimate, you should be able to, let's see what prescriptive, use it as a paradigm or rule to recognize problems and maybe even prescribe remedies. Prescriptive. Okay. Okay, these are really terrible definitions. Saying exactly what must happen. Oh my goodness, these definitions are terrible. Giving exact rules, directions, instructions on how to do something. Right, so it's a legitimate system because it gives you exact rules on how to do something. Okay, in the chat, talked to my mum about this. I had an example from the past. Telling her was beating her down by remaining one of her failures. Didn't want to see both sides. Tricky to do so. I heard stories that relate. So you're saying that when you related to your mum about the consequences of a false belief, she said that you, by telling the truth, was doing harm to her and beating her down. Interesting. What's that called? Is that part of the game? What's it called when you tell someone the truth about how bad they're doing and they say, oh no, they start what they call pearl clutching. Oh no, don't say that I've ever done anything wrong. That would hurt my feelings. I was a saint, and your job in the family is to pretend that I'm a saint and I'm never wrong in any way. As opposed to, of course you're wrong, you're a human being, you idiot. Become curious about where you're wrong and the implications of your mistakes so you can actually do what you're here to do, reflect on your false beliefs, and actually discover the truth. You don't know everything simply because it's what you grew up with. You're asking me to lie to you, Ma. Because you want to hold on to an ignorance as if it's true. Well, what if you've got something to learn? And by the way, this isn't a blame game. You came away with a conclusion. You are functioning in a way that's unjust. This is important. We need to bring in the word justice. This is our standard. What makes something good or bad has to do with justice. Yeah, imagine if imagine if Hitler says, oh, by the way, Hitler, you shouldn't kill people. Well, but my feelings, Don't hurt my feelings, but I like doing bad things. Don't make me sad. How about grow up? How about develop a mature relationship with yourself and others where you can cooperatively or not cooperative, but together in a friendly way, reflect with reason on what you're carrying that's causing problems? The goal isn't to pretend that you are Jesus, even Jesus had problems, but pretend that you are infallible. The goal is to, justice isn't being perfect. Well, it's a different idea of perfection. You are a perfect representation of everything upon you up until now, but being open and curious to participate in logos and reflection is necessarily part of being fair. But it's an invitation to the game, right? Like you said, oh, but you're hurting my feelings. Well, hang on, you're hurting my feelings by acting unjust towards me. That doesn't go anywhere. Now you're in the game. Now it's who can play the role, who can be more dramatic. No, my feelings. Who can clutch their pearls the hardest in a competitive game that she learned from her family. And by the way, all of the moves, how to clutch pearls the hardest, how to use emotional blackmail, these are all techniques she learnt by studying it from her own family. There's a famous story about, is it Stalin? I think it was Stalin. Maybe it was Pol Pot. I can't remember the dictator. One of those great dictators, I think Stalin, who was raised in a convent. And he looked at how all of the nuns were secretly manipulating each other. And there was a head nun and how she got spies to spy on people, and all of the masks and roles and techniques and they learned to maintain her tyranny over everyone else. That's how he learned his way of being, so that when he got into office, he employed that on the mass scale. So that's one of the difficulties. Hey, I don't want to give up being a tyrant. I know the moves. I know how to manipulate in this mask. Yeah, so what? Hurt feelings. Why? Why is your feelings being hurt when I point out you are doing something unjust? If every time I kicked the dog, you said, hey, don't kick the dog, and I said, but you're hurting my feelings, what would you say to that? If your feelings are being hurt by someone pointing out an injustice, then your feelings are tied to a prejudice that you shouldn't have. Yeah, it's called emotional blackmail. Yeah, anyone can say, oh, you've got black skin. Oh, that hurts my feelings. Well, because you're racist. Who cares? What's important is the truth. If your feelings are hurt by things that are untrue, then you've got a bad relationship with truth, my friend. Now, these are rational responses, but the thing is, that probably won't do anything because she didn't learn how to use emotional blackmail through the logos, through reading Socrates, as we do in this channel. Just imitating someone. So how you feel about something is different from the truth. But by the way, this pearl clutching, who did you learn that from? When someone was unjust to you and you spoke up about it, and instead of taking responsibility, they blamed you for their feelings or use emotional blackmail, who did that game to you? Where did you learn it from? If it's an inherited tradition, if it's emotionalized behavior associated with certain fundamental beliefs, as we just read, where did you learn it? By the way, do you know that it's unjust? So that's the game. We're learning how to use the logos to speak up about injustices that affect our soul. Yeah, anyone can say anything about hurting my feelings. Yeah, you're racist. truth about human beings being the same can hurt your feelings. Who cares? What's the expression? Facts don't care about your feelings. But how you feel about the truth is indicative of your problem. Are you excited about the possibility of learning? Or are you afraid? Why do you fear truth and a mature relationship? Before she would say she would butt people's teeth. What does that mean? She would butt people's teeth, like headbutt them in the teeth. When I pointed out how violent that was, she said she used it on a 7-year-old and never thought that way. Yeah. So we're going to point out how unjust it is to act in that way. So what do we do in the face of injustice? Especially for those, our teachers from our early age. Do we tolerate it? Do we toe the line like a dog? Blind loyalty to the ignorance and violence? Bust people's teeth, okay. Or do we try and, do we play the game of the logos? Put words on it, speak up. And is there an art to speaking up? Well, simply just telling the truth without any understanding your background is already a step forward. Much better than being a dog for Hitler, being a dog for a tyrant, being a servant to a tyrant. But the thing is, whether or not we get to address our teachers directly, some people, our parents have passed away. So we get to imagine what we would say to them. And another sense is, in our life, we will find ourselves running into people who are just like them. And we have to keep putting words on it. Keep going until finally you've understood it sufficiently. Now that's a key word for the dialectic, sufficient. Now in our readings of Socrates, we've seen many dialogues in which Socrates runs through a dialectic and it doesn't work, and he does another one. Because it wasn't sufficient. It didn't sufficiently point out the nature of the cause of the problem. Same too with us. When we have an inner voice, so we don't even need them around, we do it to ourselves. We're such good students to such bad teachers. We'll have that inner voice. We got to speak up about it. We got to bring it to light. Share it with your friends. Share it with the Discord. This problem keeps coming up. This state of mind associated with this kind of internal self-talk, or what we call the negative daemon. There is some psychic force that keeps this dialogue alive. Now, it's not true, so we call it negative. It's against the self. It's louder than the positive daemon, but it does serve an important function. If we're here to address our question, there has to be something keeping it alive, so we don't just ignore it. There's a reason why you went through that 15 years of education in that family with those false beliefs. Now that you're an adult, you don't just ignore it. What the hell would be the point of all that suffering and all that education, miseducation? So there's a voice that keeps it alive so that you can address it, so you can learn the dialectic by applying it to what's false as well as what's true in your learning of philosophy. So it is just. It does have a power. It does know a lot about you. It does know exactly what your problems are. So it's the daemon. Only it's the negative daemon because it's not giving you instruction or guidance on what's true. It's keeping alive the problem so you can learn what's true. It's not passive. Just like in this early scene, you didn't blindly accept it. You weren't passive to the forces of your parents. You walked away with a conclusion. Your brother or sister or even your twin wouldn't have made the same conclusion. This is what we're learning. You are responsible. Yeah, it sucked that you were in that family, in that situation, whatever. But the kind of conclusion you walked away with, the way you made sense of it was yours. So something about your soul brought in a way of making sense of things that the family triggered. Very, very good. They're very good at triggering it. But you came away with the conclusion. A false conclusion. You missed the mark. In a certain kind of way. There's a reason why you're born into this family. So there has to be something keeping alive that false conclusion and reminding you of how shitty it feels, all the negative states of mind, all the problems that come up. I don't get that job. I don't talk to that girl. I don't play the sport and excellent. I don't read Plato anymore. I do other things instead of watching this channel. Something keeps that voice alive so that you can find out that false conclusion and the cause of that false conclusion. So you can purify something false you don't even know you're carrying about your soul, preventing your evolution in the higher realms, but also you're learning to master the dialectic. So for all those reasons, for that wisdom and knowledge and that ultimate care, it's the daemon. It's the voice of a kind of wise, caring spirit, but also it's negative. It's not true. Keeps your problems alive. So within the short term, it's negative. Seeing it as a whole, along with the Philosophical Midwifery book, it's positive. So it's a negative daemon. She gets angry fast. Right, that can be a tool. Look how much energy I can show. Doesn't that make something true? Who taught you that? Who taught you that being angry makes something true? Or what kind of a justice is it to use fear of anger or emotional blackmail to prove something right? Is that tyranny or is that justice? Yeah, is that the idea that might is right? If you can be scary and angry and violent, does that make you right? Or is that an example of injustice? By the way, where did you learn it from? Who was doing this to you? Who was your teacher? Yeah, it's like toddler throwing a fit. Well put. So what you're doing is pointing out an injustice in their way of being that must come from a learning, so someone that they learnt it from. So they're what's the do unto others as what was done unto you, the golden rule. So they're doing to you what was done to them. If you point out, hey, it's unjust, number one, and number two, this is what it is. It's a toddler throwing a fit. Why is this attractive as a state of knowing? Who did it to you? And do you want to continue being unjust in this kind of way? You're not forcing them to change. You can't force anyone to change. But you can invite them to play the game, invite them to reflect. You don't speak up based on how they respond. They might always throw a fit because they love that tradition so much. They get away with it too much. Maybe their career is every time they applied for a raise, their boss would say no and they would throw a fit and then they got the raise. They cared too much about that position or whatever. Screw them. Who gives a shit? You say it because of how it affects your soul. What did it do for you to use the words you're learning in philosophy? Excellence, justice, truth, beauty itself, goodness itself. What did it use for you to upgrade your language and function with it? Number one. What did it do for you to speak up about the things that you normally kept silent about? What did it do for your soul? That's why we say it. Probability-wise, they're not going to change. Maybe the best you can do is give them a puzzle to think about that they might take with them into their next life. Just from what I've seen in thousands of different midwife talks. But the difference is you are inviting them into a more mature kind of relationship. This is how we talk. We reflect with reason, following the dialectic, using the self-logos terms, truth, beauty, justice, goodness, soul, meaning, all these words. Different from the language that you inherited from your family, the way of being inherited from your family. This way of being is unjust, a word that I learned from philosophy. Here is an invitation to have a more mature kind of relationship, where we reflect on our two fundamental human questions. What are we carrying that's false, that's causing our problems? And what have we forgotten about the true nature of self and reality? Philosophy and midwifery. Therefore, what are we doing? We are we're recognizing that midwifery is an essential part of philosophy. Where's my highlighter? Here we go. And we are returning to a revitalized Platonic study over here. Revitalized Platonic study. What's Platonic study? How do we use the logos and dialectic to recall the truth about self and reality? That's what we're learning in the Meno, by the way. What does remembering have to do with learning? But also, what's philosophical midwifery? How do we use that same logos and dialectic to remove what's blocking that? What's our false idea with truth about truth and justice and learning that we're holding on to that prevents this way of being? That's the invitation. And hey, they might never change. Think about how much work you have done in philosophy and midwifery. Think about how many of these podcasts you've listened to for you to get to the stage where you can do what you do. Have they done that? How much have you sacrificed to learn what you've learned? Have they done that? Will they do that? They're a special kind of person if they do, as you are. But hey, it doesn't matter. You can still tell the truth. Because it's affecting your soul. What are we doing? We are learning how to address the uncovered pathologos through reflecting on our behavior and our states of mind, what we would call emotionalized behavior, recognizing that it's associated with our fundamental false belief. And it's prescriptive. We can predict what's happened. We can apply it to other people. And it has the capacity for verification and evaluation without requiring external diagnosis criteria as the DSM. The DSM is a really, really big book that psychologists use to assign illness. What kind of screw up are you? Are you this? Are you ADHD? Are you bipolar? Are you cognitive dissonance? Are you whatever? We don't need that. Thus, the long-held belief that rational psychotherapy is in principle. So here is the false belief that we are addressing. The pathologos within the tradition of addressing pathologos. What's that? The long-held belief that is false. By the way, how many parents try to make sense of problems by assigning buzzwords? Oh, he's just on the spectrum. He's just got ADHD. He's sick. It's not me. I'm not fundamentally passing on an ignorance that I learned myself, passing on an injustice done to me. No, I know everything. I'm a saint. I'm freaking brilliant. Why? Because I've got kids. And you can pretend to kids because they don't know any better. I like that lie. And my feelings are hurt if you tell me that I'm bullshitting. So what's the cause of problems? DSM. Oh, if they're just on the spectrum. A language that assigns blame to the victim or the child and prevents reflection on the cause of problems. That's the game. Right? Same thing with war. Oh, we hate this other team. Why? Oh, because there are this. There are vermin. There are cockroach. They are fundamentally incapable of participating in reason. And all of the problems that we are doing is caused by them because we've assigned this word that implies wrongness. Now, what wrongness? What language are you in? Religious? Oh, call them heathen. Call them goyim. call them infidel. A language that implies wrongness so you can continue to bullshit or cosplay the knower. Okay, what's the equivalent in psychotherapy? The DSM, a big book of words that you can use to assign wrongness. You're just inherently bad. You've just got autism, that's all. Instead of what? Uncovering the pathologos, surfacing emotionalized behavior that's associated with one's fundamental beliefs, and it's a rational system that is prescriptive and has the capacity for verification and evaluation. Challenging the long-held belief that rational psychotherapy, understanding problems, and addressing them in this dialectical way is in principle incapable of either being empirically verified or affecting emotionalized behavior, changing your way of being. It is rejected. This is the sea change. This is the difference. Yeah, everybody thinks that about themselves, but this claim says that it's nonsense. What if it wasn't a physical illness like autism or whatever? It was simply that every human being develops a false belief about the self and reality that they play out in their lives as a dialectic of what isn't true. Okay, and here's the next question. What if we didn't have that understanding? And we grew up in an Aristotelian Latin tradition of behaviorism and physicalism, materialism. Then any problem dealing with the psyche you'd want to explain physically, because you don't have a logos of mind, consciousness, being, reality, Platonic philosophy, dialectic. So any problem would be prescribed to physical. Therefore, 50 years ago, women can't vote. They're not physically capable of reasoning. They're hysterical. Now we know that's bullshit. To ascribe physical conditions for their psyche. It's nonsense. Just because they've got different hormones doesn't mean they don't have a psyche. It doesn't mean any of that crap. Sexism. Same thing with racism. Hundreds of years, we are allowed slaves because they're psychically, intelligently inferior. And therefore, it's good or just to enslave people who aren't as able to participate in intelligence. Now, the reasoning of that is bullshit and self-serving, obviously, but you are explaining states of mind and ways of being with physical causes. We know that physical causes aren't the causes of things. Socrates talked about it in our reading of the Phaedo. He had to go on a second search of causes. Are you listening to this because you got physical bones and physical muscles? Or did you decide with your mind it's a good use of your time to understand the nature of self and reality? If so, then those physical bones and muscles would be physically boning and muscling something else that you thought with your mind would be more good, which good isn't physical either. It breaks down very quickly. So of course we don't use, some people do, but normally we don't use evil by nature, sinful in nature, sinful in birth. We don't use that, and we don't use that as a reason to oppress or abuse other people. At the moment, there's a genocide happening on the Palestinians, and they do use that language. Physically, we don't think, people are genetically incapable of participating in reasoning. That's bullshit racism. Now, again, Palestine, they are doing that right now, but generally we recognize that's ignorance, archaic, abusive, false, unjust, which is why most people in the world are against the genocide of the Palestinians. You can't say they are genetically inferior and must be cleansed. You can't say they belong to the wrong religion, so they're heathen and must be blown up. Hundreds of thousands of children. That's unjust and wrong. Now, what's the modern equivalent of that same way of functioning within the Latin or Aristotelian tradition of physicalism, empiricism? Blame your problems of your psyche with autism. I mean, that's the buzzword right now. What's that? A physical illness that causes the psychic problems you have. Does it solve anything? No. What ends up happening? Prescribe physical remedies, which are drugs, ADHD medicine or something like that. So what are we showing here? We're showing that the opposite is true. It's not physical causes, it's what we carry in our psyche. Fundamental false beliefs that we have not had a tradition of addressing since Socrates. Literally, Plato didn't do this, Socrates did. So since Socrates, we dropped the ball, and this validation study proves, is the only form of psychotherapy that has been validated, that proving this is the way of understanding human problems. Not scapegoating physical things. That might be appealing to people who have been taught not to reflect on causes in mind. So all they can think about is physical things. Oh, that's an immigrant. That's the cause of my problems, says conservatives and right-wing fascists. It's a physical thing you can see. Any idiot can see the difference between a black and white person. Now, it requires a little bit more reflection to realize, actually, no, we're all the same consciousness, following the same principles of the logos. The problems are not caused by immigrants, it's caused by systems that create and maintain our wealth inequality primarily, and fail to address the logos. What is the actual cause behind these structures? What's the pathologos behind psychotherapy, as we're reading here? What's the pathologos behind spiritual traditions? What's the pathologos behind education traditions? We took Aristotle, we were talking about that right now. Fundamental false beliefs motivating societal institutions that get perpetuated through the family, that can be addressed and solved. Not only that, you can reflect on becoming free and realize there was a justice, there was a reason why I grew up in this family, in this society. To learn the dialectic, a kind of education and nurture and mastery I can take with me. Can't take my cars, can't take my wealth, can't take my fame, but I can take this mastery of the dialectic maybe with me to those higher dimensions, escaping the need to constantly reincarnate into problems and maybe evolve further. So that's the Phaedo. Why would that be the case? That our problems are necessary for us to learn the dialectic as part of our learning and education for our further spiritual development. And equally so, why is it necessary for us to realize, hey, if we are playing out of what happens in a society, if we don't have the midwifery, we have genocide and wars and perpetual wars, and we haven't learned from our mistakes. We lack what we need to learn from our mistakes, so we've been repeating the same injustice, war, oppression, slavery. Capitalism is the name of the game today. Military-industrial complex is the name of the game today. Last century, it was, Nazism. Before that, monarchy, so on. Same thing, different language. So our society would realize, hey, this is what follows if we do not evolve into the mastery of the logos. Therefore, just like with our souls, so too with our society. The next stage of evolution would therefore be, apparently, provably so, in this book, society picking up the logos and doing our best to share in it, individually and globally. Isn't that cool?
Wow.
I think so. In 1987, I formed a group and produced a computer software program. In 87, making computer software. It was called, let me bring up my color. 1987, I formed a group and produced a computer software program, and I made Baldur's Gate 3. Wow.
Wow.
Oh no, it was called To Artemis, the challenge to know thyself. That is based upon philosophical midwifery. For we realize the need and the importance of introducing the ideas to the general public. Hooray! Why am I happy? Because that's what we're doing here. They didn't have YouTube back in 1987 or Twitch, but the same principle. It's important, the need and the importance of what? Introducing these ideas to the general public. That's what we're doing here. So good for us.
I don't want to eat a monkey.
I don't want to eat a monkey like Joe Rogan.
I don't want to eat a monkey.
Instead, I want to introduce these ideas to the public. Ideas that I have benefited from significantly myself. I looked for that game, I want it. Baldur's Gate 3. No, it's actually called To Artemis, a challenge to know thyself. If you do find it, share it in the chat. I don't know if it's still being hosted. 87, 97, like 30 years later. Can use if you find it. Now, if you're anyone who's watching, if you're good at programming and you do come across this To Artemis program, update it. Give it a fresh new coat of paint with some sprites and some interactive gameplay elements and things. That would be kick-ass. The program brings the user into a dialogue. The dialogue brings the user into a dialogue. Questions structured to probe the root causes of their problems. We've been talking about not physical excuses or dismissals, but questions. Notice the way we heal ourselves is something to do with something non-physical. Almost as though, as we evolve from physical organisms to those that can participate in language, reason, dialogue, that highest level of evolution is our tool to solve problems. Don't go down and blame physical things. Oh, you've got a physical deformity. You've got a physical illness. No. That thing we evolved last? That is our way of solving problems. Notice no drugs, we're having dialogues. Now, whether or not changing our biochemistry through drugs can help dialogues is another question. There are people who like to indulge in those sorts of things, and they find that it does create the conditions for dialogue, but without the dialogue, it can be a bad trip. Anyway, what are we doing? We're using the dialogue to find the root causes of our problems. Isn't that interesting? Since it plays the role of the midwife. So what does the midwife do? Brings the user into a dialogue by questions structured to probe the root causes of our problems. So in chat today, addressing our specific parents about our specific problems. Can we use this to help understand what we do? Are we trying to bring the person into a dialogue? And are we trying our best to phrase what we see in a question that can probe the root causes of the problem? Who are you imitating? Why is it important for you to be this mask? Does it look beautiful? Questions probing the root causes. It offers a kind of model or way to understand. The process of questioning in philosophical midwifery. It was hoped that some among these users might develop into philosophical midwives. Now, this is interesting. This is a goal that has come up before in the text. That it was hoped that some among these users themselves develop into midwives. This is curious. This has come up a couple of times before, that once you do this and you benefit from it, so you have the freedom to reach the goals that you were blocked from, suddenly you can get that job or play that sport or do that thing you've always wanted to do, and then you're out the door. Hey, thanks midwives. See you later. Now I can get that raise I've always wanted. Now this happens a lot. But we've been seeing in the text so far several times, it was hoped that the people realize, so let's use a dialectic to understand this. So they apply, let's say it's division, they apply a different color. They gain an understanding of midwifery. They do it, they find a midwife, they go through the process. Usually dreams are the best way of discovering a problem, because dreams have extra benefits. It's not just I've recognized this problem, my dream is pointing out this problem, and it's the more urgent problem, and it gives me some extra details. So dream analysis is usually the best way to get into this, but just having a problem is another way. I've gained some understanding, I've actually done it, I've applied it to my life, so I've gained some freedom, division. I now can have that job, I now can have that, I talk to that girl I wanted to talk to, I can have more excellence in how I do this other thing, and maybe, do this other goal I've always wanted to do but couldn't because of my block. That's where they end. They're out the door. See you later, buddy. Bye. And we say to them, hey, don't do that. Don't go off and use it just to do that.
I don't want to eat a monkey.
Don't just use it to eat a monkey like Joe Rogan.
I don't want to eat a monkey.
Don't want to eat a monkey.
I don't want to eat a monkey. I don't want to eat a monkey.
Instead, take the next stage. What's that? Reflect on those divisions and synthesize it, unify it together. What's a conclusion? So don't just have the experience, reflect on the experience. With that reflection upon the experience, what can you surmise or synthesize? What conclusion can you come to? Considering it's helped you in every area. Your relationship, your job, your sport, your games, your everything. And maybe you've even talked to your friends in a similar way and it's helped them too. Synthesize that. What conclusion can you come to given that reflection on your experiences? Experiences are dead. Reflection and understanding is what changes us, what we're here for, that we can do in time, being incarnated in time. Now, take that conclusion from those divisions and analyze it. What does that mean? Take it back to the beginning. What you've defined, your basic understanding of midwifery, given your experience and your conclusion, come to a new definition about midwifery. And that definition might include, it's the most important thing for me to do, therefore, my definition isn't just, hey, this is a cool way of solving problems, or this is a cool way of personal development, or this is a rational form of spiritual development. No. Now you've come to another conclusion. It's also something worth mastering myself. It may be the height of that evolved function of reasoning. We're not physical. We are different from the animals in that we can reason and reflect and have dialogues. Now, I say that, but I also know that Bunny the talking dog is starting to learn language. There are some cockatoos that are using an iPad to talk as well. So the animals are catching up. There's a pig on Instagram who has a small vocabulary of English words. Mainly it's he wants to have food or wants an ice cube, or he likes to dance as well. He likes to say good morning. But generally speaking, we have evolved this a use of reasoned reflection that we can say the best way of using it is this dialectic. And the way that we should apply this best use is in midwifery. So now we've got a new understanding of our definition. It's not just a cool way of solving problems, it's something that's the highest use of human capacity, and therefore might be why we're here. And therefore, from that conclusion, we might realize that, hey, we might ourselves develop into midwives. Oops. We might ourselves develop into philosophical midwives. That we would only do if we use that dialectic structure that we were using in midwifery to free ourselves from problems, apply it back on itself, use that amazing reflection that you benefited so much from, use it to reflect on the system itself. If so, you might realize that, hey, maybe I should become a midwife myself. To help myself, to go even deeper. Hey, maybe now I can, let's use music as an example. Hey, now I can play gigs, but I might want to play bigger gigs in the future. So I need to address those problems that come up. Hey, I'm able to talk to that girl, but next time I might want to ask her out on a date. So I better learn. And then later I might want to ask her to marry me. Each higher level of functioning might surface a deeper pathologos. Or, hey, maybe I can benefit, but also I can pass it on to my friends. Or maybe I can introduce this into my job, evolve the system. Maybe I can share it with others and evolve humanity. Whatever your conclusion is, you might want to develop into a midwife yourself. And this has come up a few times. The idea that our author, Dr. Pierre Grimes, hopes that there'll be more midwives on the horizon for humanity. Not just him. No, he was good at it. He kicked ass at it. But maybe we can too. Oh, I found a link to Artemis. It's 14 years old and the site is gone. The coming out and showing oneself is the hard part. Right. One way of talking about what our goal is here is to know and show the self. We're learning the logos. So we could say, hey, we're showing the self, or the logos is seeking expression. That was got from the text. If you're good at computers, find where this site was. Hang on, I think I got a knock on the door. I'll be right back. Right, so no one at the door. Yeah, maybe hunt down whoever hosted the site or whatever and see if you can find it. It might be worth putting back online. All right, and from these, a few might go on to explore more deeply and become stung by philosophy. So that's an even deeper thing. That's cool. When you realize, hey, I'm learning this dialectic stung by philosophy. But where does it come from? And by the way, in using it, I have to know things like beauty and justice, because the thing that I'm speaking up about is unjust. That's important to recognize. And the reason why it was so appealing wasn't because of logos, because they seemed beautiful. So beauty, what is beauty? What's the role beauty plays on our soul? Such that even its shadow can keep us in a problem our whole lives. That's philosophy. What is justice? What is beauty? What is the dialectic? Why are we here? So this is being stung by philosophy. Now, the word stung is also an interesting word. There has to have been something that woke whoever, if you're watching this, woke you up and made you say,
I don't want to eat a monkey.
I don't want to eat a monkey. I don't want to learn this.
I don't want to eat a monkey.
But hey, that's just a theory.
I don't know why I pushed that button. So you got stung in some way. And the word stung comes up in our Mino reading. We're reading the Mino. So check that out on YouTube. We've got the videos up on there. So what does it mean to be stung? Right. Using the Wayback Machine to find to Artemis. It was natural for us to think that since we had friends that entered philosophy, okay, we had friends that had entered philosophy through that door, then one can pursue the Logos more profoundly. So that's a good hint. Awesome. Found the game in the chat. One can pursue the Logos more profoundly. So there's a hint into what we're doing in philosophy. Are we understanding metaphysics? Are we finding our destiny? Well, one way of talking about what we're doing by reading philosophy is pursuing the Logos.
Wow. 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 Wow.
So that's a good hint for us. And I myself know people who have entered the Noetic Society not because they're interested in philosophy, because they've had a midwife talk with myself and they've recognized this is the only thing that's ever helped me solve my problems. I've done many different self-help courses and Tony Robbins and personal development stuff and life coaching. I've done a lot of that, and ultimately they don't work. They're all marketing and bullshit. I see Anthony, back before the internet, Anthony Robbins was popular. But now he's found out to be lacking substance. He's very good at marketing. And now he's aligning himself with those right-wing grifters who, when they realize that people know that they're just bullshitters, they're what we call sophists, people who are good at working people up into a frenzy, very dynamic. Imagine being rich. Imagine having all of your dreams. Yeah. Now associate that image with me. Pyramid scheme people do the same thing. Imagine you don't have to work anymore. Imagine what it would be like to be on a beach. Okay, now buy my pyramid scheme. They always do that. They neglect the Logos and they go for faith. Hope and faith. Now politicians do the same thing, but they also add in fear. Now imagine when the immigrants, they're going to rob your house. The immigrants, so vote for me. Right? There's no reasoning there. There's no logical coherence between states of observation or definition and then demonstration and then division. It's just all over the show. It's free association. If you ever talk to a person who free associates, it's very irritating. You're talking about something and then a word will trigger their memory. Oh, that reminds me of this, and they're off. Now Socrates in the Phaedo says, don't do that. Don't mix the hot and the cold. You're talking about the cause and then you run off to an effect and then you free associate like that, like sophists trying to do. Having realized that he's, anyway, I'm going on a bit of a tangent about to Anthony Robbins, but back in the day, it was hard to come across something like this. And we had people on TV like Anthony Robbins who are very dynamic. I used to be poor, but now I'm rich. They failed to mention I'm rich because I convinced you to give me your money. So now he's aligning himself with the same right-wing grifters who, when they realize that, oh, actually, hang on a second, people can see through my nonsense now because we have internet, we can share our reflection, our experience. So now I have to change my audience and target the most vulnerable, those who are most blocked from reason and reflection, those who are only at the level of hope and faith and belief without understanding, or in rejecting understanding for belief. So, and that audience is associated with, we say it's the conservative or the right wing because that section of politics specifically targets those who are most vulnerable to faith, hope, fear, and not reason. So famously, Donald Trump holding up a Bible, the least Christian person, even if you did believe in that stuff, holding up a Bible upside down, not having read, I don't know if he can read, but he definitely hasn't read the book. He's been asked, what's your favorite passage? Oh, all of it's good. Those sorts of non-answers. Knowing, I think he himself, before he got into politics, said, oh yeah, if you want to go into politics, do the right wing because they're just grifters. They lie and they get religious people who are already convinced to believe whatever they're told. It's funny that he said that. I mean, tragic and funny, I suppose, that he said that and then did it. Kind of like L. Ron Hubbard, when he was a science fiction writer, said, hey, you could just create a religion using these tricks, and then he did it. So anyway, some people who like, oh, I've tried all these things, they don't work. We can add in this modern psychotherapy that's purely empirical or purely physical, doesn't work. They come across midwifery, they found it works. Right, old reference. So yeah, Anthony Robbins is a bit outdated now. He's not really in the zeitgeist anymore. So his face just comes up in some right-wing sort of nonsense now. But back in the day, he was like one of the early life coaches or whatever, grifters. They find that midwifery works, and they're like, well, I'm going to get into it for that reason. And then while in the realm of midwifery, they realize, oh, hang on, these people are also doing philosophy. Let's see why. Let's see what they're into with this philosophy. And some people get into that as well. Often, midwifery and dream analysis will be messages to you to say, also pick up the other game. You really need to be having your nose in a Platonic text as well. So, since we had friends who entered philosophy through that door, one can pursue the Logos more profoundly and become a part of that tradition that finds in Platonic thought, a direction which shares a kinship with those religions and philosophies that have enlightenment as their goal. So we were talking in general about religion because it's based on faith. There's no understanding. You just believe what you're told. And it can be difficult. Anyone who grew up Christian, you recognize, oh, hang on a second. We never read the book really, but our local pastor or preacher, his opinions we ended up believing. And then when I moved towns, the youth pastor there had different opinions, and what the hell, what's going on? I realized I have to get rid of what I used to believe what these people think. So lots of problems that come up with religion or to be bound by a belief or faith. That's what it means. People will try to say, oh no, it's actually understanding too. Well, the word means to be bound by belief. You can't go to the picnic if you don't believe in Jesus, that kind of thing. So, but some of them actually have enlightenment as their goal. There are some Christian mystics out there. And what's the Muslim version? There are mystics within other religions too. By mystics, I mean they actually try and change their state of being and experience something. It's not just belief only. Nevertheless, some of them have enlightenment as their goal. Now, for the majority, it's do as you're told and you go to heaven maybe. But some of them, maybe for the priests, actually, there is a thing called enlightenment. You actually can change your state of being and experience different dimensions of reality. Don't know how successful they are. It's a different story. As a result of, but Platonic thought is kinship. So it's that area. If you get into religion or philosophy because you want to know reality, because you want to be changed and made better in a more fundamental way, that impulse has the kinship. Right. As a result of the computer program, of the software program, seminars, workshops, and retreats I have conducted. As a result of the software program, seminars, workshops, and retreats I've conducted, it became clear. It's not the right color. It became clear that a full statement of philosophical midwifery is needed. Because behind these activities, it is the need to discuss the doctrine of the pathologos in greater depth, is the need. Okay. So he was doing a bunch with it, having a lot of success, helping a lot of people. Then he realized there was a need to discuss the doctrine of it in greater depth. We saw this earlier when he was, people were coming to him when he was teaching, and said, hey, I have these problems. Can we talk about it? And he was helping them solve their problems. And when I was over in California with the man, I saw that in real time. It was quite amazing. He'd be teaching a class, and then he'd finish his class, and there'd be like 8 people who weren't in his class waiting outside his door, and they would just walk along with him, and one by one he would address them. And they'd all be like, I've got this problem. He'd ask them some questions, and then they'd walk away stung, puzzled. Oh yeah, I never thought of it this way. And then one by one they would sort of like move away. It was pretty cool. Some people not with problems but with questions. I've got this question about Plato. It's like, okay, go off and do this and then come back and then I'll answer your question. Giving them work to do, giving them puzzles. Pretty cool. But we also read that after a while, they realized that maybe they should learn it too. So that's when they developed the Noetic Society Midwifery program. So in a similar vein, he was doing it in his software program, seminars, workshops, and retreats. And let's get rid of this. And then software programs, seminar, workshops, and retreats. But then he realized, okay, let's go a step further and actually nail this stuff down. Discuss a doctrine of the pathologos in greater depth. A full statement. The difficult task of translating my intuitive approach, and that's so good thing we did that reflection, because here we have it again. He's adding to our definition. It was an intuitive approach. That's what he was doing. Isn't that cool? He was doing it intuitively. He was gifted. He was a savant. The rest of us have to learn it. It's quite an interesting dude. So in chat, somebody looking for the game. I'm saying it's not a game. It's text-based. Like you'd ask a question and then your answer would like a web game, would like flow on to the next thing. But it could be upgraded. Like those other 1980s web games or computer games were text-based too. But then somebody came along and added graphics, and we had like King's Quest. Mainly it was text-based, but it was some sprites. I used to love that. Oh, managing myself. Those games kicked ass. But they evolved. So the Broken Sword series is a kind of modern day equivalent. I really wish they'd make more Broken Sword games. Those games ruled. Especially the early ones. So yeah, if you come across it, upgrade. Okay, he was doing an intuitive approach to midwifery. But to put it into words. And so he put it into words. And during the lulls, when the work was being revised, discussed, and edited, I recognized the need to add various sections to it. It was also during these lulls I wrote the dialogue, Is It All Relative? Now, this book is awesome. I don't have it on my desk, do I? No, I don't have it on my desk. It's in my bookcase. This book is required reading, really, especially for people new to philosophy. It's a fantastic... I know some people who this book got them stung. And it's important because the cultural belief that we are all in at the moment is everything is relative. It's all relative to our thumbs up, our ideas, our perspective, our opinions. There is no truth. Everything's just relative to your own personal opinion, right? So don't question us as we start a cult or as we do these harmful things or do a harmful political party. Don't ask us questions while we do a genocide. Aren't we entitled to our own opinion that the Palestinians should be wiped from the planet? Isn't it all relative? Who are you to say? Wrong question. It's what is to say. Not who. Who's about people. Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent. Is it all relative? Ask that question. Is it really all relative? Or is there truth? And it's written in a very, amazingly normal way. Like it's people having a discussion at a coffee shop. And it's amazing. Like the sorts of questions people ask you're thinking it as it's hard. You're thinking, oh, well, I'd want to ask this question. And then the guy asks that question. And then another guy asks a question, goes, oh yeah, I never thought about asking it that way, but that's exactly what I want to know. It's really, really cool. I recommend it highly. Get Is It All Relative? In fact, we should probably read it on this channel at some stage too. So maybe down the line. It's a bit of an introductory one, but it's awesome. Nice. Okay, so he wrote the dialogue, Is It All Relative? And you go out and buy it. Do it. Do it.
I don't want to eat a monkey.
Don't eat a monkey, buy this book.
Flibbity-jibbity nonsense.
And if you don't, you're doing flibbity-jibbity nonsense.
Flibbity-jibbity nonsense.
What?
Okay. And if you do it, you are the best. Okay. Okay, so he wrote the dialogue, Is It All Relative? Which was produced on videotape. What? I didn't know this. By KOCE TV, Channel 50 in Huntington Beach, California. What? Okay. Internet sleuths, if you can find this, please share it under the comment section or in our Discord. Let's find this dialogue that was on videotape. That's a cool part of our history. Huntington Beach, California. And it's now published as a book by Hyparxis Press. Oh, Hyparxis is a term in philosophy. That's the top of the pyramid, the fullest flowering. The dialogue explores another level of philosophical midwifery because it identifies a set of ideas that are called social fictions. So, another level of midwifery, set of ideas called social fictions. What does that mean? Well, our personal pathologos have its context within the family and the certain scenes and our own conclusions, but it has to exist within a social context. Hey, if you grew up in the 1400s in the Middle East, whatever you learn from your family has to allow you to survive within a Islam tradition. So, you know, women being covered up and not having any rights and all that sort of thing has to be taught within the family. Otherwise you go out and, you know, believe that you can be treated as an equal and then you get stoned to death, that kind of thing. So equally so, our pathologos has to exist within a set of social fictions, like everyone is entitled to their own ignorance. Opinion, I mean. And this is a big one. There's no truth, except for the things that are important. Like there's truth about how medicine works and who should be a pilot and who should fly a plane. But everything else, politics and spirituality, no. Everyone is just as right as everyone else. If my Aunt Jessica wants to believe that spirituality is believing in pixies, then that's just as true as somebody who studies Plato. There's no difference. And anyway, worth reading. These are the ones that block us from entering into... Okay, so what do these social fictions do? They block us from entering more fully into an arena of understanding. Right? Of course, if it's just opinions, what's the point of learning understanding? That takes effort. If you can have the opinion that you're a dentist, why go to the work of understanding dentistry at a medical school? Just grab a hammer, start pounding on some children's teeth. Right? Isn't that easier? Now, it's absurd when we apply it to dentistry, but that's the way of thinking that's applied to personal development, spirituality, enlightenment, the meaning of life, politics. Really, two realms, right? How we run the state, how we run our soul. There's no standards. You don't have to show a complete understanding and demonstrate it for politics. You just have to be a good speaker or manipulator or sociopath who can manipulate people. Same thing with spirituality. L. Ron Hubbard talked about already. Create his own religion? Who cares? There's no standard, right? grab that hammer and start pounding on people's teeth. Anyway, what does it prevent us from doing? Going into an area of understanding or participating more fully, because we do value understanding. Like, we understand that you need to understand how to drive your car. That's how you get your driver's license. But to go into it more fully, what's the implications? What if you can understand yourself? What if you can drive not just the car, but your soul in a more or less excellent way? So more fully. That's what we are blocked from with this social fiction. Because they're insidious influence. Social fictions have an insidious influence. Their insidious influence undermines the belief of our ability, undermines the belief in our own ability to reach truths about ourselves and the reality we participate in. That's exactly what we were just talking about, wasn't it? We're okay to understand how to do dentistry, but if we think that we have the ability to understand, what does understand do? Allows you to reach truth about yourself, your soul, yourself, and the reality we participate in. Then you're mental. Otherwise, why would we have a million religions who are scamming people? I mean, not all of them. If you're watching this and you think you have the right one, I mean the 999 other religions that are scamming people. What do they say? You have to believe, that's what religion is, to have a saving belief. You can't reach truths about yourself in reality. You just have to believe. The L. Ron Hubbard's book, or Joseph Smith's book, or this book. Really, it's not the book, it's the people who use the book to be like a Tony Robbins, or they inspire you. Hey, look, I'm telling you what the book. Don't read the book yourself. No, it's too difficult. Don't understand it. Just follow my opinions. Now, what does it do? Blocks us from actually understanding those things. What things? Self-reality. They're two biggies. Okay? Also the subject of our pathologos. False belief about ourselves and reality, but we'll get to that. How much time do we have? Let's keep going. As things happen, As things happen, when the world got out of another new avenue for communicating, we developed our webpage. What? Oh, when the word got out. When the word got out that there was some things called these web pages. Have you seen a web page before? Well, it's just coming out. In the chat, my way of getting around everything is subjective or relative is asking about identity of numbers and to see if they say 3 is 5. That's a good one. Now, some people who play along, they might do some mental gymnastics and say, well, maybe you'll see it in the book. There's some people who try and claim that 3 is actually 5 if you believe hard enough. Sometimes people who argue hard enough that 3 is actually 5 might get a few appearances on the Joe Rogan podcast.
I don't want to eat a monkey.
They tell the Joe Rogan that 3 is actually 5 and it's all relative, and Joe Rogan is very confused.
I don't want to eat a monkey.
And he tells them, I don't want to eat a monkey.
I don't want to eat a monkey.
Anyway, some fun. So, developed a webpage. The Academy for Philosophical Midwifery. Hooray. Julie Grable, a philosophical midwife. Interesting. Offered to manage our website. And you can find it at www.philosophicalmidwifery.com. At least at the time of publication of this. And she has played an active role in bringing it to birth as well as nurturing it. Is it still being nurtured? 30 years later? I don't know. While Tom Easton's creativity shaped his design features. That's nice of Pierre, giving props to the people who helped in his website. With this website, we posted all kinds of challenging ideas. So this is interesting. So we might even be getting a model for what we should be doing together on our channel. Post all kinds of challenging ideas, right? Are we sharing challenging ideas in the Discord? Essays on philosophical midwifery. Are we doing essays on what we're interested in? And announce a list of videotapes we developed. Have we been doing videotapes? Well, that's what this is. So, thumbs up for videotapes. 2 thumbs up because we're doing a good job. All this became immediately accessible and entered that stream of information that marks this new age as one of dialogue. Wow.
Wow. Wow. Wow. Wow. Wow. Wow. Wow. Wow.
This new age is marked by... What is it? New age dialogue. That's cool. We were just talking about only moments ago that our highest level of evolution as animals is reasoning and communication, which is dialogue. Dialogue. We can dialogue. We're pointing that out because it happens to also be true that this most evolved feature of us is the very thing we need to use to solve problems. It's not the physical things, the least evolved, your color, what cave you were born in makes you crazy or true, or sick or healthy, or your physical characteristics or your physical symptoms or physical illnesses, or whether or not you believe in the right God. None of that old-fashioned bullcrap. It's through dialogue. If you dialogue well, the art of midwifery, you can uncover and solve problems, uncover the cause of problems and solve them. Wow.
Wow.
Which seems fascinating given our cultural upbringing, the beliefs that are our societal beliefs. But if you say it out loud, the most evolved part of our being is the very thing that we need to be utilizing with the most meaningful and beneficial effects. It's obvious. Your sister is in doing... Oh, you were thinking of doing the college psychologist thing that your sister is doing. Okay. This work is hard. It's fun though. It's fun. Because we have fun sound effects.
Wow.
Wow. But hey,
He didn't know what solipsism was. He did.
Right. So that's why it's fun, even though it's a bit hard. So, we're just talking about how, hey, isn't it obvious now that we say it that the most evolved part of our being, dialogue, is what solves problems? And equally so, our inability to participate in our most evolved function, dialogue, causes problems. Where does our problems come from? We were doing something and our parents or our surrogate parents came and said, no, and we couldn't, no, don't you talk. And all of the various techniques, emotional blackmail, oh, you hurt my feeling, pearl clutching, not in this house, all that kind of bullshit stops the dialogue, stops the participation in the logos. And what did he say philosophy was? Reaching truth about ourselves and reality, but also through sharing in the logos, participating in the logos. Where was it? And what midwifery affords you is a freedom to more fully share in the logos. I've highlighted everything. It's hard to find it. It's in there somewhere. Where is it? Can I search for a word even though it's... No. Oh, yes. The logo seeks expression. All right, can't find it. Anyway, we just read it. And we said it's a hint into what we're doing in our philosophy. Which is, oh yeah, cool. In the chat. Pursue the logos more profoundly. So, what does dialogue do? We are participating in the logos, and we're pursuing it more profoundly when we involve our dialogue with the highest mind ever, Socrates. So he is doing a dialogue, and we read it as though we're there with our highest, and we also try and understand his way of thinking too. So what's our highest way of functioning spiritually? What's the spiritual tradition that will rival even the ones we find around us? The dialogue of Socrates. How do we do it? We read in a certain kind of way where we're engaging in and seeking the logos of dialogue. In dialogue. The logos, the principle of dialogue. How do we solve problems? The dialogue. What's the most evolved functioning a human has? Dialogue. When do problems come from? When politicians or fascists or whatever stop dialogue. Last time we talked about Nancy Pelosi. Oh, I don't hear the protesters about Palestine. La, 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 la. Literally fingers in her ears. Stopping dialogue. And politicians allowed to just give speeches. So they do buzzwords. I support workers' rights, while they actually remove all workers' rights. I'm a champion of the people, while I'm giving all the money that belongs to the people to these overseas oil companies. Multi-billionaire individuals. They are not doing dialogues. And when they do have debates, it's not a dialogue. It's opinion, 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 opinion. TV reporters, what's the problem with journalism? Well, you could say, well, they're actually not journalists. They're bought and paid for by conglomerates and corporations that try and lie to people so that they can keep exploiting them for money. That needs to change, of course. But if they were doing it, they need to be having a dialogue. And when they do interview people, they don't hold them to any standard of dialectic or dialogue. They're allowed to free associate, to use buzzwords, to never answer a goddamn question. So what should the TV journalism or any journalism be? The art of dialogue. What should psychotherapy be? The art of dialogue. What should spirituality be? The art of dialogue. Can we unify all systems of understanding into at least requiring essentially the art of dialogue? At least to be able to discover your blocks. Let's say you wanted to learn something else like math. Well, math is, you could see that math is actually an expression of dialogue too. There's a question and an answer on either sides of the equation. Let's go back to like flying a plane. Well, there'd have to be a dialogue between teacher and student. You'd have to have a kind of dialogue with how do you study the material. You could say that you could understand the dialectic and how you approach the plane. Okay, but even if you take out that, there would need to be an art of dialogue in uncovering any blocks you have in your learning, in your flying plane, because you're a human being, you have blocks. So what he's saying is the new age is dialogue. That's the new age. Which is funny because in the chat, midwifery is working. That's nice. She's good at her job and gotcha questions didn't work. I don't know. What do you mean? What's gotcha questions and how are you using it in this context? So, dialogue. Dialogue solves problems. Dialogue is the form of spirituality that rivals the new systems. Dialogue approach to, okay, cool. That's interesting about the Wright brothers. Dialogue approach applied to our problems is what we're bringing into Platonic tradition. Dialogue is how we... Now, Carl Jung talked about how he used dialectic, but didn't actually record any of his dialectics, so we just have to take his word on it. And when he did talk about how he understood problems, he talked about general archetypes, not personal pathologos. But he did say, the whole thing comes down to dialogue. So even the people who we accepted as experts before this recognized dialogue as the way. So all of that, we're talking about dialogue. Of course, it's the highest evolved part of our functioning. Of course, it's what we would be needing to use. Of course. And what does the internet do? Opens up more avenues for dialogue. And what's this channel? We're having a dialogue. What's our Discord do? Allows for dialogue. What can you do if you subscribe on YouTube and Twitch to get notifications when we go live? You can participate in dialogue. Isn't that cool? The new age is one of dialogue. So, new age is one of dialogue. Isn't that interesting? If that's the case, would you want to get ahead of the game? Thumbs up. And master the art of dialogue, which would be what? The dialectic, which is what? Sharing in and unfolding in the logos. Sharing in the unfolding of the logos. Lots of questions today. Our primary interest was to find the audience for Philosophical Midwifery. Find the audience. If you're watching this channel, you are probably who he's talking about here. Find the audience. Now that is different from what I usually do when I highlight things. On this one. What? Uh-oh. Okay. Here we go. Okay. Essays on midwifery. Videotapes. Oh, goodness. Goodness. Okay, essays on... Oh, my goodness. Essays on... Oh, my goodness. Okay. Essays on midwifery. Videotapes. Okay, and now we got this color. New age is one of dialogue. Isn't that cool? Our primary interest was to find audience and you're the audience, and to broadcast our work for those who might benefit from it. That's what we're doing here, so that's good for us. Find the audience and broadcast our work. We are broadcasting our work. We're doing the work and we're sharing it. You might benefit from it. The result so far has exceeded our expectations. So we can say that the web opened another way for us to begin a dialogue with the world. Wow. That's fantastic and good to read, because that's the ethos behind this whole channel. I am someone who's gone through this process. I've studied, I guess, worth saying personally, I've been studying this and doing this for 20 years. I was very fortunate to spend time with Pierre Grimes and the Noetic Society for many years too. And yeah, it's benefited me significantly more than anything else. And we can understand why that has to be the case. And I am broadcasting my work, and our work is how we're doing it together.
You're a wizard.
I'm looking for someone to share in an adventure.
We are adventurers together, and we're broadcasting our work. You can follow along on Twitch, on YouTube. You can join us on Discord, where we can share essays and challenging ideas and our own work and our creations that, like our art creations that encapsulate what we're discovering too. So yeah, you can share. You can join the community, because what? We are finding an audience. Someone people who realize or are curious about the significance of this and want to benefit themselves and participate in the art of the highest level of development, dialogue. and be ahead of the game in the new age of dialogue. Well, let's do it well. So on that note, enjoy the broadcasts. If you are the audience and if you think you benefit, join the community. You can do so on Twitch, on Discord, on YouTube. You can find links below. You can support on Patreon and hopefully donate. There should be a donate feature somewhere at some time. I think you'll find it on Twitch maybe. I'll look into that. But yeah, this is what we're doing here. We're sharing it with the world through the web. So just as Pierre went through this process back in the 80s, so too are we doing it now. So we are part of a fantastic, rich, noble, fun, beneficial, meaningful tradition, all of us here. So thank you for being one such person and being a part of such a fantastic, important tradition. Bigger net, more fish, as is said in chat. Good point. So thank you for joining me, and I will see you next time.